Hello and welcome to my week 2 media presentation where I will be discussing this week's ethical theories. The theories I will discuss today are natural law, categorical imperatives, utilitarianism, contractarianism, and I will also apply 2 theories in a public administration setting and also discuss why virtue of theory does apply to public administrators. In Aquinas' natural law theory, it states that morality comes from within. So basically it explains that we're born with the instincts to want what is good for us, and that we automatically carry the knowledge to know what is right and wrong. For example, we do not run towards danger, and instead we seek to meet our basic goods. Then we have categorical imperative, where unlike St. Thomas, Kant believed in reasoning and not religion. He believed that since religion was different among many, it would not produce the same level of meaning or morality. In Kant's categorical imperative theory, it discussed that moral law is binding in everyone under every circumstance. So it doesn't depend on the person's desires, there's no exceptions, and basically it is set in stone. So how is this moral law applied? Well, it is used in a sense, I guess I want to see it as peer pressure, where if one person follows a certain conduct, then a group will follow, and then it causes a larger number of people to follow as well. So Kant believed that one's moral was driven by desires, and as explained in the Crash Course video, people work for money, they study for good grades. So as long as you know what is right and what is wrong, people are able to learn and know what morality is. So it's important to act in a way that will produce the desired outcomes universally, which is why I put that quote in there by Kant in the PowerPoint. So next we have Bentham and Mill's utilitarianism theory, which focuses on outcomes and consequences of actions. So in the Crash Course video, it did a good job at explaining the measures of consequences by the intent behind the action. So a consequence is considered good when it is driven by happiness and pleasure. So this theory goes more into depth compared to Kant's categorical imperative theory. They're kind of similar, but this one goes into more in-depth, I want to say, because Kant stated that moral was driven by desires. Now this one, it states that, so it poses the question about why we want good grades or why we want money, which the answer varies between people. So, they may want money to buy a home, to provide for their family, but ultimately the answer is a positive for why they want good grades or why they want money. So utilitarianism believe that the reason should drive morality because people's intents are positive. So this theory also explained that people should act to provide the highest number of goods, even if it compromises one's own wants. And finally, we have Hobbes and his contractarianism theory. So basically, the explanation is in the word contractarianism. So it explains that morality is not always printed on paper or always spoken out loud or agreed upon directly. But it happens when a group of people are together and they realize that cooperation creates more benefits. So this is implicit contracts. This theory helps build rules and orders because in the Crash Course video, it did explain how if there was no rule or order, there would be a lot of havoc. So those that do not follow the rules and only look after their own interest and do not benefit. Not everyone agrees with the rules and laws that are set, but people agree because there is a mutual understanding that if the contracts were not in place, then, like I said, it would wreak havoc. So this theory becomes real among people once they agree to it, and the way that they agree to it is by following the rules that are set. So, two theories that are used in public administrative settings are contractarianism and utilitarianism. So, those are two that I'm going to use to explain how they are used in a public administrator setting. So, to start off with contractarianism, as we explained briefly, every single rule and expectation is not clearly drawn out in contracts, but expectations are agreed upon through actions. So, as a public administrator, we often represent the community and we are expected to act in a certain way. And sometimes we mimic political leaders or in order to get an idea of how one is expected to act, because sometimes we cannot fully express one's ideas. And in utilitarianism, as a political leader, sometimes, most of the time, their intent is to provide the greatest good for the public. So that's why we have votes, or they seek out the public's opinion in order to provide the greatest good, because they know that they can't meet everybody's needs, but as long as they can provide the most need, I think as a political leader, that is their goal. So finally, on to explain why the virtue theory does apply to public administrators. So I do believe it applies to public administrators because in the crash course video, it did a good job at explaining how, as human beings, we are rational yet social, and it is important to be virtuous as a political administrator because we do represent the public. We advocate for them and take a stance on political situations. So it is important for public administrators to be virtuous for example, knowing what to say, diffusing a situation, as explained in the crash course video. So it's important to read a room because since we are representing a community, the community can easily see through political leaders that do not seem passionate about the stance that they're choosing. And this is done by not being reckless or arrogant and being able to read the room and also assess the situation as a whole to make the right decision for a community and represent them appropriately. Thank you for listening to my week 2 presentation on ethics theories. I hope I added some insight for this week. Thank you.